Explain the definition and characteristic of financial liability and financial equity. The concept of financial liability is provided in paragraph 11 of MFRS 132, which is a contractual obligation for a company to deliver cash or exchange financial asset. Financial liability is generally classified as either fair value at profit or loss or at amortized cost. An entity can choose to classify an instrument at fair value at profit or loss, provided that the categorization of security reduce the accounting mismatch or inconsistent recognition or measurement. If several measurement bases are used to recognize gain or losses, inconsistent recognition and measurement may occur. MFRS 9 require all financial liabilities be classified as amortized cost unless specific conditions are met that would cause a financial liability to be classified as a fair value at profit or loss. MFRS 132 define financial equity as the contract that leaves a residual in the entity's asset after all of its liability has been paid. An entity that issue an equity instrument is not obligated to repay the amount subscribed, since the equity instrument does not create an obligation to repay. The instrument cannot be a contract requiring the issuing company to deliver cash or other financial assets to another party or to exchange financial asset or financial liability. The key features of an equity instrument can be justified as a wise measure to guard against potential standard abuse. It will affect the computation of gearing ratio, a financial measure that acts as an indicator of the entity's financial risk. The distinction between what counts as a financial liability and equity become crucial.
Next is distinguishing between equity and liability. PSAK 50 2014, Ikatan Accountant Indonesia 2014 in paragraph 16 states that the firm should consider the following factors when determining the categorization of liability and equity. When the firm uses the definition in paragraph 11 to decide whether a financial instrument is an equity instrument or not, if and only if both of the following conditions A and B are met. The instrument is an equity instrument. So A, the instrument has no contractual obligation. First, to deliver cash or another financial asset to another entity. Second, to exchange financial asset or liabilities with another entity under potentially unfavorable condition for the entity. Next is B, a contract that will or may be settled in the entity's equity instrument and is either first, a non-derivative for which the entity has no contractual obligation to deliver a variable number of equity instrument of the entity. Second is a derivative that will or will not be resolved by exchanging a predetermined amount of cash or another financial asset for a predetermined number of the entity's equity instrument. According to PSAK 50 2014 paragraph 18, the Ikatan Accountant Indonesia 2014 requires the content of financial instruments to determine their classification of the statement of financial status of the entity, not just its legal structure.
Okay, next we go to the problem related to the issue discussed in the article. The first problem or issue is the research had to address whether is the liability or equity classification in the transaction of convertible bonds. So they don't know. The convertible bonds either is the equity or liability for the company. The next, there are several issues at the important features of the convertible bonds instruments agreed by ABC and XYZ company. The first problem is the maturity that is not specifically stated. So the full conversion and payment cannot be made before the due date. So not specifically state the maturity date of the convertible bonds, and the payment cannot be made before the due date. Next, there are confusion about how to bifurcate convertible bonds into their liability and equity component. Even after release of IAS 132, we know after release IAS 132, many people or firm refer to the IAS 132 to bifurcate to identify whether it's the liability or equity for the company. Next problem is the financial statement of ABC do not disclose whether the issuance of the convertible bonds by ABC and the 100% absorption such as convertible bonds by XYZ were transaction between the related parties. So we don't know XYZ company is the related parties to the XYZ or not.
Approach might be used by the standard setter for the 5 problems shown. The first one is hard to address the liability or equity in convertible bond. The approach are to consider accounting standard, review the accounting standard such as the Financial Accounting Standard Board FASB guideline to determine how the bond should be classified. The second problem are the maturity date is not specifically stated. The approach are to review the terms of the loan or investment. Look for any information that may provide clues as to when the maturity date is expected to be. These may include the length of the loan, the interest rate, or any other details that may provide context. The third problem are full conversion and payment cannot be made before the due date. The approach are to follow up, keep track of the progress made in the conversation and follow up with all parties to ensure that the most important issues are addressed before the due date.
Number 4 is about confusion about how to bifurcate convertible bonds into liability and equity components even after release IAS 132. So the approach is the fair value of the bond component should be separate from the fair value of the conversion option using a valuation technique that is appropriate for the specific bonds. This can include using a pricing model such as a Black-Scholes model or a market observation approach such as comparable instrument analysis. The last one is the financial statement of ABC do not disclose whether the 100% absorption of convertible bonds by XYZ were transactions between related parties. The approach is it would be important to first gather as much information as possible about financial statement of both ABC and XYZ, as well as any information about the convertible bonds and the relationship between the two companies. This may include reviewing regulator filing, financial report, and other relevant documents.
Finally, we can conclude that under financial instrument, which is financial liabilities and equity are defined differently in this context. In line with MFRS 132, the research shown above in this case study of ABC's issuance of convertible bonds clearly demonstrate the need of considering a financial transaction substance in addition to its legal form. The practitioner can decide whether a financial instrument should be categorized as a liability or an equity based on the details of the transaction by using accounting rules generally as they apply to the PSAK 15/2014 clause. So, based on the result of the analysis of the application of the substance over the form the transaction and applying a comprehensive understanding of the relevant accounting principle in relation to the issuance of convertible bonds by ABC, the following conclusion can be drawn. First, the transaction is a transaction between related parties. Second, the substance of the convertible bonds supports its classification as an equity instrument rather than a liability. And the last one, The impact of classification as equity will reduce ABC's debt equity ratio and reflect the true substance of the transaction, which is likely to the result in XYZ becoming the majority shareholder once the bonds are converted and ultimately dilute the existing of shareholder.